staring at the edge of the water, long as I can remember, never really knowing why. I wish I could be the perfect daughter, but I come back to the water, no matter how hard I try. Every turn I take, every trail I track, every path I make, every road leads back to the place I know where I cannot go, where I long to be. See the line where the sky meets the sea, it calls me, and no one knows how far it goes. If the wind in my sail on the sea stays behind me, there's just no telling how far I'll go. I know everybody on this island feels so happy on this island. Everything is by design. I know everybody on this island has a role on this island. Pride, I can make us strong. I'll be satisfied if I play along, but the voice inside sings a different song. What is wrong with me? See the light as it shines on the sea, it's blinding, and no one knows how deep it goes. And it seems like it's calling out to me, so come find me and let me that line. See the line where the sky meets the sea, it calls me, and no one knows how far it goes. If the line of my sail on the sea stays behind me, one day I'll know how far I'll go.
Hey there, and welcome to Kensington. We're so glad you're here with us today, whether that's in person at one of our 6 campuses or streaming online. If we haven't met yet, and I hope we have, my name is Susan Walsh, and I'm the campus director at our Orion campus. One thing I love about my job is being part of a team of people who are passionate about Jesus and loving their neighbor. So if you're here with us in person, I want you to know that the hub is open. It's that very conspicuous place in the lobby with orange signs and people. Well, not orange people, but people in orange, I mean. Anyway, as things continue to open up, you may want to find out more about how to get connected here beyond weekend services. The hub is a one-stop shop for just that. So if you're new, or it's been a while, or if you're just ready to take some next steps, stop by the hub in the lobby. Here's another opportunity for our in-person attendees. Believe it or not, we still have openings in our K-Kids program for volunteers, because there's nothing like being around kids to bring us back to childlike faith and delight in the little things. Our K-Kids program is for babies through elementary students during Sunday services, and we'd love to have you join our team. So you can take out your phone even now and check out the app, or go to kensingtonchurch.org/kids-serve. And I won't be offended if you're looking at your phone while I'm talking. And while you're on your phone or tablet or personal computer, remember that we're social. So engage with us daily on Facebook or Instagram. It's a great way to stay in the know and to engage with the community throughout the week. On Facebook, like and follow our Central Kensington page, as well as your campus-specific group. We'll get right back to this incredible Go series in just a moment. We're in week 3 already, and I've enjoyed every moment. It's giving us such a fresh vision about God and our purpose on this planet. I wanted to point out that tomorrow is a holiday. It's Memorial Day, and I'm sure most of us have plans to enjoy the day with family and friends, but let's remember the men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice for their country and our freedoms. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Good morning, everybody. I want to say welcome to everybody who's sitting here in the auditorium with us and those of you who are viewing online. We're just so glad you're here with us today. And you know, she mentioned that it's Memorial Day tomorrow, and so we just want to say thank you to all our veterans who are here sitting in the service or watching online, that we truly value and appreciate the sacrifice you've made so that we can have the freedoms that we have to stand here right now and do what we're doing here today. So thank you to our veterans. Well, my name is Tracy Henkel. I'm the Discipleship Director here at the Clinton Township campus, and I love to be able to say good morning to you guys. And you know, I was listening to the song, and it's called How Far I'll Go, right? And she was talking about how she's standing on the edge of like a beach, you know, looking at the water and seeing far away and not knowing where's she going to go. And I relate to that. Like, that's how I feel when I see water like that. I'm standing on the edge. I want to go. I want to get out on that big ocean. Are any of you with me on that? But then last night at the campfire, we were talking about that. My friend Terry said, I don't like that. I don't like that, not knowing what's at the end of it. I want to see boundaries. I need to see borders. I don't like big water. So we're all wired so differently, and we're kind of talking about that in our Go series. And, you know, as Christ followers, we are called to go. And sometimes that can feel uncomfortable or even confusing. You can feel afraid a little bit. But if we don't try that, if we don't go, we will never know what God's purpose is for us or how he's wired us to do what he wants us to do and to see how far we'll go. So that's why we're doing this series, so we can get you on the move to go and do what God wants you to do. Well, you know who else is doing what God wants them to do? Our Kaleo Kids. Kaleo Kids is an awesome performing arts program where kids do singing and dancing and acting to bring about a message. And we're inviting you on June 9th to come to this campus where the performance is at, and it's called Speak Life. And everyone is invited to attend. And we just think it would be so great to have a really full auditorium for all these kids who have worked so hard to see how far they will go. Well, when you came in, you were given this handout right here. This is about our newest church planning project called the Timothy Initiative. And you've been hearing about that as we've been sharing stories over the past few weeks. The information in here, we want you to take home and read it, not right now and not during the service. And if you're viewing online, all of this information is on the website. But we've been sharing these stories to just see what God is doing in a completely different part of the world. And, you know, it's to help you understand what this project is about. And it's about planting churches in northern India. And in this area, it is primarily Hindu and a very difficult place for Christians to live. Watch this video. It's in Indrani. And just see how God is moving in amazing ways. And then after the video, we'll come out and talk to you a little bit about how you can join in on this super Timothy initiative of church planning, just for you to be a part of it too. Enjoy.
Before Indrani met Jesus, her life was full of darkness. The deaths of her husband and father drove her to an obsession with power, an obsession with witchcraft. Because when she practiced witchcraft and channeled the spirits, she could see her husband and father. She could talk to them. It made her feel like they weren't really gone, that she wasn't alone. So she gave herself over to the spirits and their power. But that power became petrifying.
My village saw the evil power I possessed and were afraid. They knew I was a powerful witch doctor and that I could cast spells to destroy their lives. I terrified them. So they rejected and abandoned me. Eventually, so did my family. I was all alone.
Then one day, a disciple maker named Dilka met Indrani. Like others who knew her, Dilka could see that Indrani battled darkness. But unlike the others, she had the answer to Indrani's problems: Jesus. Dilka shared with Indrani of Jesus' great love and power and invited her to church. Indrani agreed to go, but only with the hopes of accessing more power and becoming an even more powerful witch doctor. While Indrani went to church to gain more power for herself, God had other plans.
The church prayed for me, and as they did, I saw a great light pushing out the darkness inside of me. The evil that had held me for so long was gone. When I returned home, I tried doing witchcraft, but I couldn't. Something was holding me back. As I went to worship the spirits, I heard a voice say, "You have victory in me. I love you so much, my child." When I heard this, I gave my life to Jesus.
Indrani removed the idols, charms, and shrines from her home. She burned them, renounced her ties with evil, and declared that she was now a follower of Jesus. Her community couldn't believe her transformation. The evil that consumed her was gone, and everything about her changed. She looked different. She acted different. And she had a new purpose in life, to know God and help others to know Him too. Indrani has become an incredible disciple maker. She has led 8 of her family members to the Lord. She shared the gospel with more than 1,100 people. She's brought the good news of Jesus to neighboring villages. 4 of those villages now have followers of Jesus, whom Indrani disciples. She has also helped start multiple house fellowships, one of which is in her home. A home that was full of idols is now a house of worship to the one true God. Jesus has transformed Indrani's life, and He's used her to bring many people into the kingdom. This is what happens when people meet Jesus. This is what happens when disciples make disciples.
Over the last 20 years, God has knit my heart with India. So I'm just so happy and have so much joy that I get to be back for this year when we're doing this. Our initial work started 20 years ago, was in central India, and this is now in northern India. And I've been in many of these small little churches planted in these villages way out in the middle of nowhere, and to see the extraordinary life change that's taking place. And so to think that we get to actually be a part of this. You know, we're talking about Go these weeks. That's our series. There's lots of ways to go, and one way for us to go is to support a man or woman who has said yes to God to go plant a church, indigenous people living in that community, to plant a church and make disciples, and we get to go with them as we support them. And so that's what this initiative is about. We're calling it the Timothy Initiative. Anyone know why we call it that? All right, I'm not going to give the answer. I'm going to ask you next week and see how many hands go up. Check it out. I think it's actually described and explained in here. But Timothy talks about going and teaching others who will teach others who will teach others, and that's really the way of Jesus. So as we've been saying for 2 weeks, and by the way, welcome to you, and welcome online. If you've been listening to this, we don't want to bore you with this, but it's so extraordinarily exciting to us that we get to do this. And we've joined with 6 other churches, which makes it even better, here in the Detroit area, that are going to plant many churches, 3,333 to be exact. That cost $1 million because it's $300 per church. So I was thinking about that, like, how could I do that? I live in New York City half-time right now. It's very expensive. Where do I have an extra $300? And I thought, maybe just one less cup of coffee a day or a week. We could get there, right? Because it's only $1 a day. It's less than $1 a day to plant a church. You can be a church planter for less than $1 a day. So we want to encourage you about the opportunity, and this explains everything. We're asking you now today to consider praying about it, and if God nudges you to actually make the gift. As an individual, as a family, to become a church planter with Kensington and actually see life change happen in northern India. Now, I have some extraordinary news to share that I'm even more excited about. This week we had an organization come to us and say, we would like to do a $100,000 matching gift for Kensington, which means if I plant one church, I plant actually 2. If I plant 2, I plant 4. If I plant 4, you get the math? Okay, it's pretty simple. So we can take our gift and see it multiplied and actually doubled. And so we're really going to expect and trust and believe that God is going to use this church to plant 1,000 of these churches. This church being Kensington, all 6 campuses, to plant 1,000 churches in northern India. So I really encourage you to pray about it, give it some thought. If God nudges you, or if your spouse nudges you, or your friend nudges you, to lean into this and become a church planter in northern India. Now, you know when people set goals, sometimes for buildings, they'll have a big thermometer, and you watch the red go up as they try to reach their goal. We're not going to do a red thermometer. What we're going to do is actually plant seedlings, little plants, until we get 1,000 planted. That represents our collective work as Kensington. And we're going to do this at our Troy campus. I think there's a slide, or maybe it was already up there, that shows the planter boxes, and it's going to be at our Troy campus. So we're not going to see it actually here at Clinton Township campus, but maybe we'll bring in pictures every week. And we believe in the next few weeks that we're going to see these boxes, these planters, all filled with flowers everyone representing the light of Jesus coming into a community in northern India. So we thank you in advance for joining us. And again, we're about following Jesus, and Jesus is about changing the world. So this is what this is about. So we're gonna receive our offering, which is totally separate than what I've just been talking about. Thank you again for your support, for all the work that we do here that makes this campus possible, that makes discipleship possible, that is changing lives right here in our own community, that's meeting needs in our own community through Forgotten Harvest and other things that we do. And so we really have to do this together. So thank you for your gifts, and you can see on the screen here or online ways that you can give through your app or through our website or through mailing in a check. So again, God bless you. Thank you for your generous support with us. So as Tracy said, we're in our series called Go, and this one is called Go With, which is not a complete sentence. Go with what? What does that mean? And the message today is going to focus on the idea that we have to go, whatever that going means. It may never mean leaving the house that you live in or the community you live in, but all of us are called to go. That's what we've been talking about. It's about going with the right heart. What's going on here in my heart and in my mind is the most important factor when we think about what it means to go as followers of Jesus. So we're going to press into that reality today. I think it's really the heart of this series that we're in right now, is where is our heart in all of this? What is Jesus doing in our own lives? Now, I want to ask you a question. Any of you, by the way, if you went to the Move Out conference in March, this is a message that I gave there. It's been adapted a little bit. So if you've been there and you heard that message, then you have my permission to take a nap for the next 30 minutes, okay? I hope you don't, but you have my permission. Any of you have a nickname when you were growing up? Or you have one still today? Nicknames? Anybody have nicknames? Some people like nicknames. Some people hate them. I was given a nickname by my older brother when I was very young, and then my two younger brothers that came later joined in harassing me with this nickname. And I lived in a small community and eventually spread to the whole neighborhood and the whole school. And this is what people called me, and I absolutely hated it. I've been in 40 years of counseling. I'm still not over this nickname deal. So let me ask you, I asked someone this yesterday, and they couldn't answer it. What rhymes with Craig? What's the first word that comes to mind? Craig? What'd you have for breakfast? Egg. Craig Egg. So I was called Craig the Egg, Craig Egg, and because I had a last name Mays, it morphed into Craig Mayonnaise. Egg mayonnaise. And I hated it. And then my older brother, who I hope is watching this online right now, he finally would repent of this, actually said, well, Craig, it's because your head is shaped like an egg. And so I would go and look in the mirror, and I couldn't see it. So I told him that, and he said, no, you got to turn sideways. So think about a young kid actually getting a mirror, his mom's mirror out and looking, and sure enough, my head looked like, I don't know what you think. Is it? Someone just said, yep, thank you. Got to go back to the counselor now. I absolutely hated the nickname. It was just, I was self-conscious about it. Maybe still to this day. Craig the Egg, Craig Egg Mayonnaise. It just stuck with me. Nicknames. Do you know Jesus gave nicknames to some of his disciples? New names? The most obvious one that we probably all know about is Simon, who became Peter. And like a lot of nicknames or new names, the name represents something. In Peter's case, he was Simon called, he said, I'm going to call you Peter. And Peter means rock. And even though Peter appears to be very unstable during the 3 years he followed Jesus, in the end, Jesus said, I'm going to build my church on you and on your confession of faith. And he became one of the pillars and leaders of the early movement of Jesus in the first century. So I love the fact that Jesus gave him a new name. Now, there's two other disciples that he gave a name to that wasn't flattering. And I want you to see this account. James and John. We see this in Mark chapter 3. It says, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, to them he gave the name Boanerges. And I'm glad they translated it for us, which means sons of thunder. That was not a complimentary nickname for these guys, these two brothers that were early followers of Jesus, some of the original 12 disciples. Why would he give them this name? Well, there's an account that happens pretty early on in their ministry together, and it happens in Samaria, and we see this in Luke chapter 9. As the time approached for him to be taken up to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem, and he sent messengers on ahead who went into a Samaritan village to get things ready for him. But the people there did not welcome him because he was heading for Jerusalem. So just a real little bit of background here. Samaritans and the Jewish people did not like each other. There was racial tension between the two groups. There was religious tension and competition between the two groups. And most Jewish people would not actually travel through Samaria. They would take the long way on the other side of the Jordan River if they were heading from Galilee down to Jerusalem. But Jesus, with his disciples, frequently went right through Samaria, and so they would have some encounters there. So how are they going to respond to this lack of hospitality? In Luke chapter 9, we read, the sons of thunder now. They have a ministry suggestion for Jesus. When the disciples, James and John, saw this lack of hospitality, they asked, Lord, do you want us to call fire down from heaven to destroy them? Right name, right? Sons of thunder. They were actually, because they were not hospitable, they said, and by this time, by the way, they would have seen lots of miracles of Jesus, and Jesus had even given them some ability to do the things he was doing. So they saw healings, they saw demons cast out, they saw even the dead come back to life. And so they knew there was power here, and so they thought maybe we should tap into that power, and they were making a suggestion to Jesus, should we burn them to a crisp for not being hospitable? Sons of thunder. That's an appropriate name for them. And you have to wonder, did they not hear the Sermon on the Mount? Love your enemy. Turn the other cheek. I mean, they were right there. We read about it. They were right there. And yet, at this point in their journey with Jesus, they're thinking about burning people, killing them, lightning, fire from heaven to come down, sons of thunder. And so that we're going to focus on John, specifically, who is one of the sons of thunder. Now, what Jesus did, we see in this passage in chapter 9, he turned and rebuked them. We don't have any specifics about the rebuke, but he was putting them right. No, this is not what we're about. This is not how we go about life. This is not how we respond to hostility or lack of hospitality. Sons of thunder, this is not the way to go about it. There was no place for this kind of intolerance that they had experienced, that the disciples were demonstrating. Yet John, and this is the focus today, John would go through an amazing transformation. It's a transformation that I want for myself still after all these years. I don't think recently I've called down fire from heaven, but I've been driving on the road and I've had thoughts about it. You have too? It's a transformation that happened with John, where he would go from the son of thunder to a different nickname, which we'll come to in a minute. In the Gospel of John itself, when John, after Jesus ascended to heaven, he took some time to write down his memories and recollections of everything that happened and the words of Jesus. It's really very loaded with the teachings of Jesus, this Gospel is. And he would use the word love 57 times in his Gospel. That's more than Matthew, Mark, and Luke combined. The word love appears. And then in his first letter in the New Testament, called 1 John, the word love appears 46 times, and it's a really short book. In fact, I want you to consider just a few sentences, a few verses that are found in 1 John. Just let this wash over us. Think about the son of thunder who wanted to have the Samaritans burned, writing these words. Anyone who does not love remains in death. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. Whoever claims to love God yet hates a brother or sister is a liar, for whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. How do words like that come out of a son of thunder? What happened to John? What was going on in his life that he would write these words? Those were just 7 verses out of 46 verses in that letter where he talks about love. I would encourage you to have some time this week, 1 John chapters 3 and 4 especially. Just overwhelm you with the sense that the love of God had totally captured the heart of John. In fact, church history gave John a new name. You may have heard it. They call him the Apostle of Love. The Apostle of Love. That's how history now looks at John. But someone else gave him a nickname earlier in the very first century. Actually, about the time of Jesus. Someone else gave John a nickname. I want to read a few verses from the Gospel of John. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved, we're just going to stop there. He saw his mother, Mary's. He sees this disciple who is simply called the disciple whom Jesus loved. We see it again in the next chapter. So Mary Magdalene came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." And then a third time. This is when Jesus is restoring Peter, who denied him 3 times. Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. And Peter asked him, he said, "Lord, what about him?" 3 times in just a couple chapters, John is identifying a person that's present with the name, the disciple whom Jesus loved. Do you know who this is? It's John. I love to think about this. You know, years later, after Jesus has ascended to heaven and John is reviewing everything that he's gone through, everything he experienced since Jesus said, "Follow me," and John said, "Yes, I'll follow you." He's reviewing all that, and he's taking up the pen and he's writing it down. And when he comes to describe events, he names people there, but when it comes to himself, he doesn't say, "And I was there." Well, he does, but he says it in a very unique way, a new nickname. "Oh, I'm the disciple whom Jesus loved." Now, I don't think he was setting himself apart like he didn't love the others, but when he thought about Jesus at this point in his life now, when he thought back about his time with Jesus, when he thought about himself in relationship to Jesus, he could only think these words, "Oh, he loved me. Yeah, I was there. He loved me." And this is so important because the foundation for everything I believe in the Christian life is that at the deepest part of our soul, we know and experience the depth of his love for us. And as we'll see, the go impulse to go do anything in his name has to be rooted and grounded there. And I asked the question, what actually happened to John? What actually happened that he would now write these kind of words? And I just want to look at one verse that describes, I think, what was really going on here for John. In John 15, I think this is the most important chapter for the life of a follower of Jesus. John 15, I remember years ago I memorized it. Don't ask me to recite it now. But at one point I committed it to memory because I wanted to live in this. And here's what he said. I'm just going to pull one verse out. Jesus is speaking and he says, "I am the vine and you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing." John is describing this intimate relationship. How intimate is the relationship between a vine and a branch? I mean, it's connected. And that's why the branch is able to bear fruit and have anything good in their life because they stay connected. And that connection is doing what? Life is flowing from the vine into that branch. It's bringing everything that it needs to bear fruit. And so for John, he learned and passed on to us that what this life is really about is remaining, or some of the older versions say abiding. It's a great word. To abide with Jesus, to remain with him, to walk with him, and to be with him, and let him pour himself into our lives and to experience his presence. When I was first in ministry, went to seminary and did some work in the city of Detroit with the homeless. And it's interesting that God bookended my life with that because that's what I do in New York City now. But when I was in my early 20s, I'm working in Detroit, and then I ended up coming on staff at a church in the Detroit area. And by then I'd gotten some more education, and so I was in this church. I was over family ministries and education, and I was doing some preaching in this church. And every year in the fall, we would take a pastor's retreat, and we'd bring our spouses, and we would go someplace away for a few days and think about the year ahead. Like, this would be early September. What is God going to do this year? And one of the things that we were asked to do on this one retreat, this particular year, was to share, what do you think God has for you this year? And we were out at Point Pelee in Canada. You used to be able to go to Canada. Remember that? Before the year we're in right now. And we were out there, and it was a beautiful day, and we're sitting inside looking out at Lake Erie and just the beauty of that. And when it was going around the circle and it was going to come to me, I didn't know what to share because I had something I wanted to share, but I was afraid to share it. And when it came to me, I just felt like I have to be honest. And here's what I shared. I said, I have degrees hanging on my wall that prove that I know about God. I have lots of information in my brain. I have lots of degrees. I can read the New Testament in the Greek. I never could read the Hebrew in the Old Testament. I passed the class, but never got it. It's too hard. But I was knowledgeable about God, and this is what I shared, but I don't think I know him like you can know a person. And I think I'm supposed to. And I remember I ended by saying, I don't want to die at whatever point in my life and be looking at a stranger. And then I said, I don't even know what to do with this. I don't even know how to take steps forward, but I know that it's not about information. It's not about knowing about God. It's actually about knowing him. There's something there more for me that I know is lacking. There was an emptiness in my heart. There was a distance that I felt from God, and I didn't know what to do, but I was just laying it out there. And that began a journey. And it's a long journey, and it's one that it's still going. And it has two tracks or two components, and they're intertwined. And I want to sum it up in this statement, and then I'll talk about the two tracks. We have to live loved. It's just two words. Everything in our life, if we're trying to overcome an addiction, if we're trying to improve a relationship, if we're trying to get our finances in order, if we're trying to, whatever we're trying to do, if we're trying to figure out what God wants us to do, if this Go series is awakening something in us, what is that? It all, in the end, is grounded in the reality that we live love like John, that we're transformed from the son of thunder to the disciple whom Jesus loved. That transformation is key to absolutely everything, and it's a lifelong transformation. And I will tell you, in my particular case, getting to know God, and the other, that was the one track, like intentionally, I just started saying to God, I don't know you, how can I know you? And one of the things he started doing pretty early on is he started moving me around into experiences that were beyond my comfort zone. I think I've shared this story in the last year since I've been here, but the first thing he did was I went to Bulgaria, and it was a really challenging, hard experience. First time overseas, first time in a foreign land other than Canada for fish and chips. I mean, it was a stretch for me. I was there by myself. It was a hard week, but God showed up in a spectacular way. And I remember getting on the plane, flying back through Amsterdam and then back to Detroit and saying, oh, God, you're real. Like, wow, you showed up. And when I came home, I took all my degrees off the wall and put them in a box. Because I was anchoring my skill, ability, my fit for ministry based on knowledge and not really knowing and walking with God. And that journey continued. God began and continued to move me to different places. One of those big moves was going from a very safe, familiar church to Kensington in the year 2000. I thought I was out of my mind. People that knew me thought I was out of my mind going to this strange church, Kensington. But God was moving me and nudging me and telling me to go. And so my wife and I, Chris and I, obeyed. And then India. First year I was here, Steve Andrews says, I think we should go to India. It's like, what? And then I've been there 20-some times now, and I continue not only to go as God gives me impulse, but every time I respond to that, he reveals more of himself to me. And the relationship is growing, and I feel his love more deeply. And then going to New York, unexpectedly in 2008. Now, it doesn't require for us to know God to go to other places, but it requires us to lean into opportunities as the impulse comes for us, the opportunity comes for us to go. Each time I did that, he revealed more and more of himself to me, even coming back this year. Living half-time in Michigan and New York has been a challenge and a stretch, and yet God he's become more real to me. The depth of his love for me, I experience more and more of that. And when we do that, here's what happens, and here's how it relates to go. When we see more and more of Jesus, we see more and more of what he sees. We feel more and more of what he feels. The burden he carries of love for every person grows in us. And the going comes out of that. It doesn't come out of a verse, a command, a duty, an obligation, a responsibility. It comes because we have his heart. And sometimes it will almost crush you or break you. India did that for me. I would look over the masses of people and the suffering that was there, and it was like the weight crushing me. And then I remember the first few years there saying to God, how do you handle the burden of this? The sun sets and rises on this day after day, every day that I've lived, and I was unaware of it. How do you handle this? And initially it overwhelmed me. I didn't know, how can I fix this? I try to be God all the time, by the way. And God says, you can't. You can do one thing. Just do one thing. And so I did. It's really that simple. As we begin to know God more deeply and we experience his love more deeply, we experience that love that he has for the world. and you almost can't not respond. You have to respond to it. And that's the cycle of life that we're to be in. You know, when you love someone, some of you are in love right now. I hope all of you that are married are in love right now. But if you're married and you remember when you first were falling in love, how you thought about that person, your mind was preoccupied with them. I remember with my wife, Chris, we'll be married 36 years this July. When I was first dating her, you talk a lot, right? You get married, you don't talk quite as much sometimes, but we talked all the time. And I'm learning about her, and I learned what she liked and what she loved. And for the very first Christmas that we had together when we were dating, I didn't have any money at the time. I'm not super wealthy like I am now. But I went to the mall, and I don't know if there were dollar stores, but you could buy cheap stuff. And she liked the color purple, and I bought everything purple I could find. Ink pens, erasers, candy wrapped in purple, and stuffed the stocking with purple. Why in the world would I do that? Did someone put a gun to my head? Did someone give me a book on dating, and here's the things you should do? There's no manual. It was coming out of my heart. And so the first order of business is to get God's heart, and his heart for you is where we have to start. His deep love for each of us. And then we begin to take on his love for the world, and that's the impulse of us to go. So we have to go with the right heart. There's a verse in John that sums it up so simply. He says, we love because he first loved us. Isn't that simple? Love comes from being loved. Every day, I would love every one of us could wake up like John and say, okay, I'm starting my new day, get my cup of coffee. You sit down and you say, oh, you love me. I'm the disciple who Jesus loves. That would become our identity, that would become deeply rooted in our hearts, that we would be men and women that know that they're deeply loved by Jesus. And the critical thing to grasp here is that he wants to take us all on a journey from sons of thunder to men and women who are deeply loved by God. That we would then reflect his amazing love and grace to those around us. And I think until that's the case, we're not ready to go. Because that's where the going needs to come from. That's where it needs to be rooted. When God sees the need and the needs that only can be met by people, then he's got to look to us to do it. Where's the impulse to go going to come from? And so I want to tell you a story that was transformative to me. And it occurred in 2 stages in New York City. And I shared it at the Move Out conference. And Kensington decided to send a team of video guys to New York City to capture the story on the streets of New York City. So you've heard me talk now for a few minutes. Now you're going to see me on the video. So please watch Craig.
So I really don't like cities, especially big cities. It was incredibly disruptive in 2006 when God began to nudge my wife Chris and me to come to New York City.
He was sitting on a bench much like this in Madison Square Park, where God said to me clearly, you're not a suburb boy anymore. This is your city. This is your home. These are your people. And I felt it, and I knew it, and I embraced it, and there's no looking back.
In fact, when I thought of cities, I thought about all the things that probably many of you think of. I thought about crime and danger. It just wasn't attractive to me. Yet God clearly called us to come. It was quite an adjustment for me. And actually, for the first few years, I hated it. Eventually, I found out it wasn't that dangerous and things weren't that scary, and I wasn't anxious all the time, and really began to enjoy living in the city and doing the work God called us to do. It was one of those just super hot July days in New York City where the city and the concrete and the brick is just holding the heat in. So I stopped at Starbucks to grab a cold Frappuccino before I went to my office. And I came to this intersection and I noticed on the corner there were 3 guys. They didn't have shirts on, which is very unusual. And I got about, I think it was about right here. And I felt some arms come around me from behind. And because I know a lot of people in this area, I thought it was probably some friend goofing off. And then I felt the hand go down to my back pocket where my wallet was, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm getting mugged. And so right here I pivoted, just instinct, pivoted against the building, trapped my hand with my wallet right here, and he's trying to pull me away. He's reaching, trying to get my wallet. He's saying things like, old man, just give us your wallet, old man, stop fighting us. He's roughing me up against the wall. I noticed people are walking by and no one's paying any attention. The only thing I noticed was my cold Frappuccino spilled on the sidewalk. I was frustrated, I think, more about that than anything in the moment. And then finally the other two guys jump in, and so they push me, and one guy starts pounding me on the arm, one guy starts punching me in the gut, and I had this sense of this cannot be happening to me. Kind of blurred almost in the background. I could see people walking by, people across the street. No one was helping me, and there's this moment of just almost desperation, like what's gonna happen, how's this gonna turn out? Finally, someone comes by on a skateboard and stops, a young guy, and then a guy dressed in a suit, looked like a Wall Street guy, steps up off the curb onto the sidewalk, and they both said something like, hey, what are you guys doing? And the guys took off running, and these guys are standing there, my good Samaritans, and I straightened up, and my wallet was still there. I was pretty proud of that. I look at my hand, it's all cut up and bleeding. The guy on the skateboard calls the police. It seemed like I blinked, and there was all these sirens, and police came from 2 different precincts, and suddenly I'm surrounded by seemed like about a dozen cops, and there was still this sense of surreal that this didn't actually happen to me. And I walked away just probably an hour after the mugging, and I'm getting on the subway heading to my office. So I was, in a meeting with my staff having just been mugged, and I'm telling them the story, almost felt like outside of myself, just kind of making jokes and getting on with business and say, we have business to do, that, I'm okay. They showed a lot of worry and concern for me. Yeah, I didn't really feel it. Business as usual. And then for some reason, about a week later, I started feeling anxious about it. And then I remember having dreams about it. Really, night after night, I was having dreams where I was back there again and people were beating on me. And it began to change how I was in the city. I began to become very aware of who was around me. I was scanning all the time, looking for people. I would begin to jump at sounds and noises. I would find myself standing against the wall so no one could come up behind me. I would avoid certain blocks. If it looked too deserted, I wouldn't walk down the block because there might be someone there hiding. It just changed the way I was getting around the city. It stayed with me all summer long. I really began to feel like I can't live this way. It's harder for me to do my work this way. I've got to do something with this. So I was trying to process it. I was talking to friends about it. I even actually talked to a counselor. I was encouraged to talk to a counselor about it, so I did that. But it just persists. And so I decided in early September that I was going to share this in a devotion with the staff. So I sat in my office at the end of the workday. Before I put my pen down, this kind of thought or prayer came to me, and I wrote it down, and it said, God, I don't want to live in fear. Exclamation point, put my pen down, grabbed my stuff, and headed home the 2 blocks to my apartment. I've probably done this hundreds and hundreds of times, but at this season, because of the mugging, it was not really just an easy walk home, because I found that I was hyper vigilant, really paying attention to what was going on around me, scanning all the time. I would even say kind of jumpy. So in this particular day, on my journey home about right here, and I'd seen just ahead of me this very large man walking kind of slow, kind of lumbering, and so I gave him wide berth to go around him on his left in a very dramatic fashion. As we're both walking, I'm passing him, he turns like this, which kind of startled me and made me jump a little bit. But before I could say or do anything or move by quickly, he said these words. He said, "Thank you for not being afraid of me." A bolt of lightning hit me. It was so shocking because I'd just written these words, God, I don't want to live in fear. And now this man, less than 5 minutes later, is looking me in the eyes and saying, thank you for not being afraid of me. And I have to say, there was no question that was God. I asked him the question, I said, well, why would I be afraid of you? And then he told me a story that he had been released from prison not too long ago. He was in a program and had to get back to his halfway house on time or he would violate parole. And something had happened to his bus ticket. And so he was stranded there. And so he began to walk toward the bus station, but it was almost a 3-mile walk. And he had made it almost there all the way this way, but he also didn't have any money. So he didn't know what to do when he got to the bus stop anyhow. So we're having this conversation and he's describing to me going block after block after block, anxious, looking at his watch, wondering if he's going to make it in time, and asking for help. And every block he was praying, God, would you please send someone to help me? Block after block after block, and no success. So he made it all the way up, of all places, right across from my office. And I come out here on the sidewalk, not wanting to live in fear, and here we're having this conversation. And so we talked about how I could help him, and just a couple blocks up was my bank, and I almost never give money out on the streets, but I saw his ID. His story was believable. He had tears in his eyes. I just felt the connection. Plus, I knew that God had sent me to him. There's no question. He felt grateful and was in tears because God sent me to him, and I felt grateful and in tears because I felt God had sent him to me. This was a moment, a divine moment for both of us. And so we took care of getting his bus ticket, and he went on to grab his bus and hopefully get there in time. I never saw him again. And I stood there really I have to say, in awe of God, because I knew he was doing a work in my heart right then by bringing this man to me, whose story would move my heart to do something to help him. And after the fact, as I would replay this over the next few days, I just pictured in my mind's eye, as he was crying out to God, I believe that God was hearing his prayer. Block after block, mile after mile, as this man desperately needed help. And I began to picture it from God's perspective of him longing to help this man. That's the desire of his heart, to help him. But he needs someone to respond. So God might be asking the question, who do I have? Who do I have that will listen to me? Who that I have who is not living in fear? Who do I have that will provide help for this man? Because God is not going to drop a bus ticket down on the streets. He's not going to drop a $20 bill. He needs someone, some person, some man, some woman to respond to this man's cry for help. So as time has gone by from this experience, it's really become for me a paradigm of how God works in the world. At this very moment today, there are people all over the globe, all over the planet Earth, all over our cities, who are crying out to God for help, who are looking for answers to prayer. And God hears every single one of those. And the challenge for those of us who are following Jesus and want to build and grow his kingdom is when God is looking for someone, when he's asking the question, who do I have? Will he look at us and say, oh, good, I've got him, I've got her, because they are going to respond. They are going to be the answer to this prayer. That's a way that I want to live. That's a way that I want for you to live. That you are living your life, eyes open, ears open, ready to respond to God. When someone is asking God for help, God sees you, he sees me, and he says, oh, great. They are going to respond. They are going to be the answer to this prayer.
When it's funny, the emotion coming back just watching that. You know, to imagine this man, block after block, more despair coming. No one's going to respond. And I'm up in my office in fear. And as we intersect right there, if you could have told me when I was writing this down 10 minutes later, I would be hugging this stranger on the block, and we'd be crying together. But the takeaway for me is not that moment so much. It's, again, seeing what God sees. Because I believe every single block, it would have been almost an hour and a half he was walking, crying out for help. Every single block, God hears the prayer, hears the cry for help, sees him, knows him, loves him. And then God is looking. Who do I have in this area? And honestly, I think for a good part of my life, when God's eyes would fall on me, he would say, well, Craig means well, but he's always too busy. He's always in a hurry. He doesn't want to be late for a meeting. Whatever the excuse was. And this not only healed my fear in the city, but it opened up my eyes in a deeper way to what he sees. And every answer to prayer, almost every answer to prayer involves a person. And so God is asking that question, who do I have? Every time there's a need. In northern India right now, to see a woman like we saw today who is desperate need of encountering God's love and be delivered from everything she was in. Who do I have? And there's these young men and women that are willing to go out and start churches, and then maybe there's some people in Michigan that are willing to help them do that. He's always asking, who do I have? We're going to give you a gift on the way out today. You don't have to wear this, but that question has just captured my heart, and so it's a simple bracelet that says, who do I have? And wearing it, because I can get back on autopilot so easy and miss moments. And I'm going to wear it where the question is facing me, who do I have? So that when I'm getting change out of my pocket or driving my car, I'm reminded that God is asking that question, who do I have? Don't you want to be the man or woman, the person, that when God sees you in proximity to a need, he goes, oh, good. Because they're going to respond, whatever it is. Because that's how God changes the world. Through sons of thunder, daughters of thunder, who become followers who are deeply loved by Jesus and have his heart. And we move out and we change the world.
With no reservations, you're not looking for perfection. There's no need in me pretending. I give you everything. I give you everything. You deserve my full attention. Nothing less than my devotion. Speak to me and I will listen. I give you everything. I give you everything. Oh, 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 you can have my heart. You can have my heart. Oh, 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 you can have my heart. You can have my heart. So be the Lord of my emotions. Set me free from selfish motives. Oh, and search me till there's nothing hidden. I give you everything. I give you everything. Oh, 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 you can have my heart. You can have my heart. Oh, you can have my heart. You can have my heart. Sing it again. Oh, you can have my heart. You can have my heart. Oh, have my heart. My heart is yours forever. Oh, Jesus. My heart is yours forever. Oh, if you want my heart, you got it, you got it, you got it. If you want my heart, you've got it, you've got it, you've got it. If you want my heart, you've got it, you've got it, you've got it. If you want my heart, you've got it, you got it. If you want my heart, you got it, you got it, you got it. If you want my heart, you got it, you got it. If you want my heart, you got it, you got it, you got it. If you want my heart, I surrender. ask you to pray, I want to invite you to stand and sing this with us. Come and consume. Come and consume every room. It all belongs. It all belongs. Come and consume every room. It all belongs. Come and consume every room. God, I surrender my heart. I surrender my mind, my soul. Consume me with your fire. Consume me with your fire. Yeah. Sing it one more time. Come and consume every room. It all. Come and consume every room. It all belongs. Oh, if you want my heart, if you want my heart, you got it, you got it, you got it. If you want my heart, you got it. If you want my heart, you got it, you got it. Yeah. You got it, 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 you got it. Take my heart, take my mind, take my soul, take my world, take my dreams, take my emotions, take my feels, take every part, take my joy, everything. It belongs to you, God. It belongs to you. Why would I withhold anything when you have everything, God? You have everything, God, and you have me too. You have me too. Yeah. So we sing, oh, 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 oh. You can have my heart. You can have my heart. Oh, 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 oh. You can have my heart. You can have my heart. Let's sing it one more time. Oh, 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 oh. You can have my heart. You can have my heart. We're singing no. Oh, oh, oh. You can have my heart. You can have my heart.
You know, I used to struggle a little bit singing a song like that because, you know, I'm saying to God, you can have everything, all of it. And then I'm not so sure that that's actually true, that I'm not holding back something, or that tomorrow I won't. Until I understood that it's not about being, it's about becoming. It's about becoming the man or woman who that becomes more and more reality, and you're never done with that. There's always more. So even thinking about what we looked at today, I want to become more and more a man who sees his identity as one who Jesus loves. Because that changes everything. That makes us want to give more and more of our hearts to him. And then more and more, as I go on that journey, I want to become the man where when God is asking the question, who do I have? He goes, oh, good, Craig's there. I know I have his heart. I know he'll respond. He'll take that step. He'll take that risk. He'll be inconvenienced, whatever it is. I hope you're on that same journey of becoming as well. Even if you're just starting today, or you've been in it for 40 or 50 years, that it's an amazing adventure that God calls us to. I hope that today whether you get this bracelet and wear it or not, you'll be mindful that God is seeing way more than we're seeing. He's feeling way more than we're feeling, that we can tap into that. If you're watching online, by the way, we're going to, at our campuses that have physical buildings, like here in Troy and in Orion and also in Traverse City. So if you're up north for Memorial Day and you're near Traverse City, we're going to put these in bins outside our doors so you can come by and pick one up. We'd love for you to participate in this. Those of you that are here on your way out, you can grab one if you want it and start wearing it as a reminder, or put it someplace that you see it, put it over your mirror in your car, something that will help us remember that God is always asking this question, who do I have? And I would also encourage us to think about planning a church. All of you can be church planners. God's asking that question about Northern India. Who do I have that will come alongside these brothers and sisters in Christ in this difficult place and help them and support them? So maybe that's you. Just take it before God, look at the information we handed out today, and see how he prompts and nudges you. Well, I hope you all have something fun to do. I've been talking to people in the lobby about tomorrow, and too many of you said you're going to clean windows and rake the yard and stuff. That's not fun. Come on, goof off tomorrow. It's Memorial Day. Have fun. Thank you again, veterans, and we honor those who gave up their lives for our freedom that we have today. God bless.